Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. Not enough people know about Jeremiah Jones, who was one of the many Canadians who fought at Vimy Ridge. Now, as you know, this is all about Black History Month and everything, and we're touching on that again this week. But here's the thing about Jeremiah Jones. A lot of Canadians might remember a few bits in their textbooks about the number 2 Construction Battalion, which I will get to shortly. But Jeremiah Jones was a bit of an exception because he served in the 106th, which is where his story really sort of shines, and also unfortunate treatment due to racism. So, who is Jeremiah Jones? He was, again, one of the many Black Nova Scotians. He was born in East Mountain, Nova Scotia in 1858. And, he not much is really known about his early life. One just kind of assumes he grew up, led a decent, hardworking life, no doubt faced a lot of racism, and then eventually World War I rolls around. Now, at this point in time, he is 58 years old. The cutoff was 45, and so he lied about his age and said he was 39. Because he and many others, whether they were Black, white, Indigenous, Asian, they wanted to serve, but were prohibited from doing so. But I'll get to that story in a different episode. What I want people to know about Jeremiah Jones was that he participated in the Battle of Vimy Ridge, which is seen as this very important battle in Canadian military history. And he was actually recommended for not the Victoria Cross, but the Distinguished Conduct Medal. Now, he didn't get it in his lifetime, though. So let's delve into a bit of the reasons why. So initially, before conscription, they're just looking for volunteers, right? Oh, come on, fight for king and country, because we were still super pro-British at this point. As a result, a lot of people, whether they were Black or Indigenous, felt compelled to serve. It wasn't like, massive groups, but a sizable section of the community. However, recruiters were actually very racist, and so there were a lot of protests over the enlistment of Black volunteers in predominantly white units. And this was the case with the 106th, which Jeremiah Jones served in, and he was one of 16 Black volunteers accepted to this regiment or battalion. Now, he goes through training, he, gets over to Europe, and he's finally on the front lines with his fellow, soldiers in the 106th. And this brings us to the actual story that involves him. He and his unit were pinned down by a German machine gun nest, and Jones volunteered to take out the machine gun nest single-handedly. He carefully makes his way up there, lobs a grenade, allegedly kills 7 Germans, and the rest surrender. Then, to make sure that they don't become a problem in the future, he forces the remaining Germans who had surrendered to carry their machine gun all the way back across Canadian lines and drop it at his commander's feet. So, right there, that's pretty badass. Now, later in the Battle of Vimy Ridge, he was wounded in action, and so he actually spent a lot of time recovering in hospital. When he finally got out of that, he was again wounded in action in the Battle of Passchendaele. And so once again, he was condemned to hospital for a great duration of the war, which is why at the end, he was actually medically discharged and considered unfit for continued military service. And again, let's remember that this man was 58 years old, which was 13 years over the cutoff point, and he was serving in World War I. So let's just keep that in mind. So, after the war, he comes back home, tries to, lead his best life, quietly fights racism, raises a good family, instills, a sense of pride, and, don't let anyone ever tell you can't do anything. You can do whatever you can, kids. But a lot of people tried to actually fight for him to get this Distinguished Conduct Medal. He never actually got it in his lifetime or from the war. And it actually got to the point where a Black Nova Scotian senator named Calvin Ruck, who will have his own episode later, was actually fighting for Jones to receive this commendation. He finally got the medal on February 22nd, 2010, more than 60 years after his death. This is sadly the legacy with a lot of people, whether they're Black, Indigenous, Asian, and when they served in, the Canadian military, and whether it was under the British Empire or under the Canadian Dominion, it's a problem that is a part of our history. Here was a man who lied about his age to get in and serve king and country. And he was a Black Canadian, and despite literally giving blood and managing to survive the Great War and helping save his comrades' lives, he wasn't recognized for this effort the way others, especially white soldiers, might have been. This is once again a stain on Canada's legacy, but I wanted to talk about him because it shows that if we want to actually care about our veterans and the stories, and there's always those people who say, oh, come on, Black people in the trenches of World War I, let's be real here. Well, it actually happened. Yes, in limited numbers, but it's not the stretch that some, very much probably racist people seem to think it is. This is about expanding how we view history, and this is actual documented history, the good and the bad, and Jeremiah Jones's story is a part of that. And the fact that more people don't know about his story is what's bothering me today.